Kamsa Chanara Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. We salute the Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva, destroyer of Kamsa Chanara, that is, representing lust and greed, supreme delight of Devaki, God himself, Guru of the universe. Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us all, protect us both. May he nourish us both. May he fill our minds with enthusiasm. May we work with great vigor. May our study be vigorous and fruitful. May we not cavil or disagree with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we are continuing our study of the Bhagavad Gita, but as usual, we normally start with, are there any questions? Yes? So, two questions are there. Yes, right. Half a question here and half a question there. Right.
So how do you feel God in everybody? I can try to imagine God in the other person. What does it mean to feel God in the other person?
Okay. So this is your other half. It's like asking, what is it like to feel love for my other partner? So that's my question to you, counter question. You see, the fact that you can't answer means it's feeling, genuine feeling. How can you describe any feeling? So sometimes we confuse thinking and feeling and interchange the term. We say, I feel this, when it actually means I think this. And the counterpoint is true. When I say I feel this, very often I think it. I feel this country should pay more attention to whatever social dimension you feel about and so on. See, feel, it really you think it. It's your opinion. It's not that you feel it. But when somebody is in distress, you can feel compassion. Feelings are easily identified, and identifiable, but not so easily expressed in words. Words and language correspond to thinking. When it comes to feeling, you can say, I'm feeling blue. See, everybody understands that. You're feeling down, depressed maybe, or I'm feeling joyful. Yes, well, everybody has experienced joyful, but what does it look like? How can you put it in a can? How can you see if it's acid or alkaline? What can you analyze it to be? So when the heart is moved, is a close expression to feeling. And imagination also plays a role. But imagination is a very useful creative tool, because are we not living in an imaginary world in some way or another? When you have a concern for something in the past, it's gone, it just comes to your mind and forms a picture. Is this not an imagination? Is this not an imaginary doubt or some negative expression of something you cannot change? It's gone, it's in the past. And if you imagine some things in the future and it creates anxiety, is this not an imaginary scenario that has not yet arrived? All our difficulties and concerns, all our stress areas and points of anxiety are because we are living in a what-if scenario. What if or but. If or but, these are the two excuses we have. These are the two introductions to delaying tactics. What if this happens? See, we're sitting here. Well, what if an airplane comes through the roof and destroys us all? Hypothetical question requires a hypothetical answer. What if a burglar comes through the window? Well, what if a policeman comes in after him? I don't know. Hypothetical situation. So are we living our lives in a hypothetical scenario? Should we not mobilize all our energetic creative force and then structure God and His angels sitting before us, use the power of imagination and allow that to stir our hearts? So we require an attitude which incorporates, adoration, wonder and thankfulness. these various attitudes. And when that gets combined, there's a feeling. How can you serve the other person? Or more accurately, God in the other person, unless in some way there's a feeling. Let's say here in the shrine, we've just read the wonderful life of Swami Ramakrishnananda. You'll see what a wonder it was for him to do the Vesper service, the Arati. How he would dance across the floor even, and be so enraptured in the living presence. How the key to his worship was to consider the deity a living, breathing entity. Now, at what point does imagination separate from reality? What do we call reality? What is our reality is purely an imagination product. Is a superimposition of what is here. It doesn't look like it. The gut doesn't register it like that. But when you analyze it properly, that's the fact of it. Don't take my word for it. Examine modern science and see how it looks. Modern science will tell you that our view of the world is only an interpretation of waves. So we should welcome the waves with a wave, possibly, a greeting. Because all these waves, dancing waves, we go a step further. These are physical waves, no doubt, but these physical waves are a manifestation of one thing. Now, one such wave system is obvious to us on a daily basis, and is the source of our whole life. So this is soul energy. We'll come to that now in this passage, but we'll come to the second question before we go on.
My question was about the rituals of the Swami you just talked about.
Swami Ramakrishnananda.
Yeah.
You see, they called him Swami Ramakrishnananda. Swami Vivekananda had wanted that name for himself, but he felt that Shashi deserved it more. See how dedicated he was to the service of the Master. Oh, anyway.
I was wondering about the fact that he kept on serving Sri Ramakrishna and feeding him and so on. And what is the meaning of that?
And I hope you feed your husband.
No, but
should I ask the question, what is the meaning of it?
But once he passed away, what is the point of doing all these rituals?
See the term you're using, passed away, to where?
He left the body. So once he left the body, what is the point of doing all this ritual of feeding and giving the food to the
that's a good question, because you see, in the worship, again it comes back to related to his question. So when we view this, is this just a picture? Is it just some form made from materials? In a sense it is, of course. But is it infused with the divinity because your imagination stirred that up? And everything that has form and shape in our philosophy is a manifestation of only that one thing. So we can make a living form, the living form of Ramakrishna, and serve that everywhere in humanity. That is the basis for social service. It is the rationale for social service. Not just to be good in a moral sense, but to put some feeling into it. Knowing that the philosophical position is there's only one entity manifesting in these diverse ways. What we see as the universe, we have come to this conclusion, is nothing more than fragmented God. We have to put in seemingly fragmented God. We don't see it like that. That's our loss. So we take something that is meaningful for us and infuse. So in puja, in worship, the Hindu method is not just to take a picture to remind us of something. That is there as well. But the process is, the Lord of the universe who sits in me, who dwells in this 11-gated city, I manifest into the picture. Once I've done that, then I worship because it's infused with divinity. Is there any parallel in Christianity? Yes, in the Romanian Orthodox Church and other Orthodox churches, in the system of iconography. An icon is not just a picture, it's infused with divinity. And that is a significant difference between the iconography of the Eastern Orthodox Church and the statues and so on and so forth of the Roman Catholic Church. Even so, you cannot resist taking it in a real way and lighting a candle or a lamp. Knowing that you're lighting something which is universally present everywhere, that is like a medium that we call electromagnetic wave system. It's invisible and yet is present everywhere, and we can tune in and tap into it if we have the appropriate instrumentation to do it. In that same way, the means for tuning in and tapping into that presence is to see, and for the intellectually minded people, feel the divine presence there, occupying our mind completely, our whole being completely with that. Now, so I'll go a little further on that. There are some who will tell you that during prayer, meditation in here, these pictures breathe visibly. Don't take my word for it. Find out from somebody who witnessed it. So is it true? Is it a projection of our imagination? Should we be bothered with these questions at all? Not really. For those for whom it happens, it's something that is real and living and generates a special place. So the worship is as if it were a royal personage visibly present enthroned here, is the system. Now, in Christian churches you do the same thing. The Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches do that in the same way. So that there's a living presence present there. I had a discussion with a chaplain at the Dublin City University. So we were discussing various versions of even Christianity. And his measuring stick for the validity of my beliefs was, yes, do you believe in the true presence? Now, if I was theologically ignorant, I wouldn't know what he was talking about. But what it means to the Roman Catholic Church is that in a church there is a tangible presence which according to them is not present in any other church. Of course, it's not true, because the science of it is not understood. The science of it is this: if you take this whole universe, as scientists do, physicists do, as a set of vibrations at various frequencies and various wavelengths, various amplitudes, some of them caught by us, some of them with our sense organs, some of them with scientific instrumentation, some of them missed completely as invisible. If you take it in this way, then what is thought? Thought and intention, is that also not some kind of subtle wave, swifter than light, faster than a photon, that has the effect of mobilizing all the subtle forces that we call nature, which consist of other waves, and finally condensing in the visible scenarios that we have, visible scenes that we call life in front of us, seen, heard, touched, tasted, and so on. Condensing in this way. Just like, you see, the power of the sun, the heat of the sun, will evaporate water and to turn it into vapor. It'll collect, and once it's gained enough mass, as it were, it then bursts forth and comes down as rain. What a beautiful drama that is. And feeds all the crops and creates life and water for you. You can't taste salty water. All the oceans take this surrender, as it were, through the power of heat on it. Surrender the vapor. It condenses into clouds and comes down, evaporates, and comes down as a condensation of rainfall. And the cycle gets repeated. And the rainfall has lost its salt, and you and I can collect it and drink it. And most of your physical body is made from it. About 70% or not. What a drama that enacts. Is thought something like that? Is thought a catalyst, some energizing thing that gets translated and condensed into the scene around us? And how rapidly does it work? Instantaneously. Let's say that time is divided into small sections, maybe something like a second, but a subdivision of a second. But let's say a unit, a second. A second is like that. Where is it gone? I don't know. I know one thing, it's gone forever. It will never come back. What did I put into it? Did I put something useful into it? Did I allow it just to wander here and there? Did I take my attention and occupy this second with something something that has a generosity of spirit for the good of everyone, something that has no egoistic intention or impulse to it, something that will create a better world, not just for me and my personal environment, but for the whole of humanity, everywhere, for all time. Can I not do that? So we take every opportunity. And for those who find meditation difficult, then with eyes open, looking at forms, inspiring lives. I just told you the life of Swami Ramakrishnananda. Then why do we have a picture of him? Because you'll be wondering, what did he look like? And then if you're really inspired by this life, you'll go further. What did he eat? How did he walk? How did he think? What was the wiring in him that made him dedicate his whole life in service? How was it that he got to this pinnacle of experience where the last hours of his life were completely immersed in the divine, what we call samadhi? Should we not take a life like that and emulate it? That is why we have symbols and pictures. Why? Because the absolute entity that has no moving parts and that has no evolution in time, that cannot be measured, that is transcending all concepts, can we not bring this within the range of our thought? And then can we not make this a living presence, thinking that whatever worship or whatever royal attributes or whatever we give to a human person who occupies a royal position and sits on a royal throne, should we not at least give that much honor that we give an earthly king or queen or monarch to the monarch of the entire universe? Should we not replicate that in a royal worship? Supposing that doesn't suit you, then leave it. Everyone is different. Supposing you prefer something that is formless and you don't require all of these things, there's ample scope for different other approaches and other methods. Choose your own, with the guidance of a teacher, obviously, and the guidance of scripture, which, if you read it like a novel, will have not much meaning for you. What is the meaning of scripture? It's something that will give you a guidance toward your own freedom. So now, if you say, in some scriptures, there is a whole genealogy, so-and-so begot so-and-so begot, whole family tree is there for generations. How will this advance your spiritual practice and get you closer to this goal of freedom? If the answer is by repeating this and understanding your own family history or somebody else's family history doesn't do it, then this is the sand referred to by Sri Ramakrishna as scripture is a mixture of sand and sugar. How to decipher which is sand and which is sugar? And if you're unable to decide that, supposing you take it all, undoubtedly you'll have a misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and then argue with the other person. You see in the prayer, student's prayer, mind you, found in the Taittiriya Upanishad, see, which says, let us not cavil, let us not unnecessarily argue with each other. On what basis? On the basis that you have an ego that defends an intellectual position. And you miss the real understanding of what is being told. Arguing on a superficial level, what used to be called counting. How many angels can you fit on the head of a pin? This was the theological argument in Augustine's day. Very important subject. There's a pinhead. So somebody must have asked a question. So we are surrounded by angels. How many of them can you fit on a pin? Then everybody scratches their head, have a huge discussion about it. Some say 20, some say 25, some say 30 and a half. Because angels, you can have half an angel. I don't know. Did anybody see such a creature? Then find out how many will fit on the head of a pin. What a useless argument. There are much more important things to discuss. So all these religions will come into this kind of theological discussion, treating things on a superficial level, not really understanding properly. What is the heart of this? Then there has to be a transition from religion, the outer dimension of something, some kind of understanding of the outer world, including rules, regulations, laws, dogmatism, etc., to an inner life, an inner adventure where spirituality begins. And only then will you find the inner growth. So all these teachers agree on one thing, that it's more important to follow the spirit of something, not the letter. The letter of the law or the spirit, follow the spirit. So among these, Jesus was one of those who maintained that. And then what happened? His followers in Christianity decided they will be legal experts and debate theology and have a huge discussion. Namely, how many angels will we fit on the head of a pin? And anybody who disagrees, please get out. On that basis. What a funny thing. Not understanding that the central truth is one. You have to get back to the central Vedic pronouncement. Ekam sat vibra bahuda vadanti. Truth is one. Wise people will call us variously. Don't argue whether Spanish is better than any other language and is the only language in the world. Don't get into debate in terms of nosism. Nosism? My nose is better than yours because it's mine. On that basis, mine is better. Yours should also be crooked and so on. Mine is crooked. Yours should also be crooked. So these are the kind of absurdities we get involved in. And they're all centered around one central thing, and that is the growing sense, out of proportion, disproportionate sense of I, which amounts to a psychophysical entity, a field in which we operate and identify with it. That is why we do this course, Enneagram and Essence of Truth, to identify this specific one, which is not a standard one, and then see how we can deal with it appropriately. So we mentioned all these things are manifestations of the one thing, and chapter 9 begins elucidating on these manifestations as a useful mechanism to understand that this thing that we call God, infinite, invisible, one without a second, any term you like, this transcendent absolute, or this, if you have a view that this world is a creation, you'll view this as a creator. If you think that this world is some kind of drama, some kind of play of waves, dance of waves, then you'll think of that entity as a divine dancer or poet or player. And if you think that this is a protected field, then you'll think of that entity as a supreme protector. And this is why a Trinitarian view of the world is there, where you can think of God as a creator, or think of God as a protector or preserver, or think of God in some way as a dancing entity that will destroy your ignorance through the sheer force of his dance and poetry. Making that entity, you see in Sanskrit, as Shiva, that means the auspicious one, the one that is fortunate. Fortunate because this entity reveals to us the dancing nature, the play of these waves that we call the universe. And underneath it will show us this one without a second, that never changes, that is never destroyed, never subject to time, never subject to space, always constantly there. So, chapter 9, where we left off pretty much, was, just to remind you, so Gitiya Bharata, I am the goal, the supporter, the Lord, the witness, the abode, the shelter, the friend, the origin, the dissolution, the foundation, the treasure house, and the seed imperishable. And we went into some way in explaining this. But these terms are very interesting and worthy of contemplating because they have a very deep meaning. Let's take one example, that this is a bijam, a seed, a vyayam, imperishable seed. Most seeds are not imperishable. All the seeds that are planted in this garden that grew into beautiful flowers spent a lot of effort. Of course, nowadays you can simply take a plant, purchase it from the gardening shop and put it in. But before it was there, it came from a seed. And the seed has this potentiality. The full-grown plant is contained within the seed. We were discussing earlier in another discussion about this question of evolution. It was over lunch we were discussing it. So somebody was saying how the modern version of biological evolution, if you put in mutation, doesn't really add up. Because random mutation cannot explain any kind of purposeful improvement. And this is now acknowledged, reluctantly, of course. Because what we would want is, from a materialist point of view, is things happening with a capital C by chance. We don't want a capital G by God. So we avoided it also in all cases. But how can you possibly have something coming out and still obey the laws of conservation of energy and matter unless it is in there in the first place? How can a plant evolve from a seed unless this plant is within the seed? How can you have evolution without involution, an involved entity, unfolding from within? And I've said so often before, this is why Charles Darwin avoided this term evolution. He preferred in his Origin of Species the phrase descent by modification. Because he knew the understanding, if you have something evolving, then something must be there potentially already. What is that? Then it comes very awkward questions. How can you get a conscious thinking, evaluating entity called man that is able to calculate, analyze, decide, put in a conscious intention, carry it through to the end, an executive officer capacity? How can you get this evaluating entity sensitive to the arts and culture from a nothing? How can you get it unless it was there potentially within from the beginning? This is the important question. So if you take evolution seriously in its true term as an unfolding, you'll see that some origin was there. So he says, I'm the origin. Then he says, I'm the friend also. You can say best friend. Best friend means non-demanding. See how your heart gets pumped, how your food gets digested free of charge. No entity knocks on your shoulder and says, come on, my child, I worked overtime digesting all the difficult things you gave me last night. And I'm not asking for a wage increase, nor do I intend to go on strike. I'll do it lovingly. I'll do it for you second by second. Even when you sleep, I'll remain awake, digesting your food, pumping your heart, circulating your blood, repairing your blood cells, solving your difficulties in dream, waking you up the next morning, tapping you on the shoulder. Come on, my child. The sun is up, so should you be. And our reaction, of course, is twofold, one of twofold. Two types of people, morning person or night person. The morning person will get up and say, glorious, thank God, it's morning. And the night person will get up, eyes still half closed, saying, oh my God, it's morning. Both invoke the divinity. So, such a beautiful lover, how can you have such a wonderful friend, such as this? Shelter, friend, all these terms are used. And the seeds that we normally encounter in our biological, organic life we find, in all organic life, is perishable. The seed that you made, you ultimately results in perishability. That perishability acts in stages, sometimes called disease, sometimes called old age, and inevitably called death. Finished. But this is an imperishable seed of the whole universe. I am that. That means the origin, which we call Garbha seed, is the same as the manifested expression that we call the universe. Noticing that and understanding that is equivalent to seeing this God within all. Not only within all, but expressed through it and as it and beyond it. And these are the stages of our own spiritual evolution. So then he goes on. Tapamyaham aham varsham digranyami ustrayami cha amritam chaiva pratyuscha sad asachcha aham arjun. I give heat. Tapami. Tapasya, you've heard the term tapasya, tapas, not a Spanish food. Tapas is a discipline, see? But really what it means is causing heat by friction. Our life needs to have this friction. We need to go against our habits and form new, more productive, healthy, positive habits, mental habits. And we don't like change. Nobody likes change. Unless it's, from the bank. So, to get this change requires friction. We have to make new avenues, if you want to put it neurologically, new avenues in the brain. The brain has inherent neuroplasticity. And from a yogic point of view, we have to make these new avenues, these new channels. There will be resistance. But if your intention is firm, and if it is unwavering because you have a solid basis from this philosophy, so you know the principles, and understanding that the emotions have to catch up with the theoretical principles, you do practice. So what is tapasya? Tapasya is exercising and strengthening your will. Be it tapasya of the senses, be it of the mind, be it enforcing strength in your will, strength of mind. This is the role of tapasya. So there's this word tapam, but it's not what is meant in this. I give heat. What does heat come from? The sun. The equivalent to say, I am the sun and I generate this heat. By heat we don't just mean temperature. We also mean life. We have no life of our own physically. All our life, all the life of plants, all organic life in this world of ours is solar energy, just canned. Put it into a bottle, bottled, pickled solar energy is what we are running on. We can't take responsibility for it. We can't say it's my energy. I feel exhausted. All my energy ran out. Whose energy is it? If you register it to the proper authority, namely Lord of the universe, Lord is your energy, it will be inexhaustibly accessible to you. Wonderful, inexhaustible energy. Why? It's not mine. As soon as I register it as mine, I'll get tired. I register to an inexhaustible source, inexhaustible energy available to me. We become inexhaustibly energetic. So the sun rays are there, and all the attributes, really, that we give a personal God are all the attributes we give a sun. It radiates, it's beautiful, it's luminous, it knows every quarter, it's all-pervading, it's a life-giver. So, if you can't imagine God in any particular form, take the form of the sun and think of that as a radiant entity beaming within you, through you, beyond you, giving life to all. And you see, this entity is not only life, but is also light and also love, and gives its signatures within us. I think I mentioned this last week, or at some stage or other. What is the evidence? The evidence that there is a being like this is because there is life in us. And what's the evidence of that? Well, that might speak for itself, you see. But psychologically, we all wish to exist. We do not wish human extinction. This is why we resist death and even ignore it as an event. We tend not to consider the subject of death and keep it as a taboo subject. But it's part of a natural cycle. Birth, life, and death happens to everybody. We may as well understand it'll happen to us. And everybody. We shouldn't be sad about it, because we have a dress rehearsal for it every night. Every night we go into a blank. Every night we resign our position as so-and-so, with property, bank accounts, etc., property and all that. And we go into a state where no division takes place, a deep, dreamless sleep. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, no time, no space. Only a unity, which we call a kind of peace. We registered after the fact there was a peace. Is this not a dress rehearsal for death? Do you not die every night? Do we not go into a deep, deep peace and reincarnate the next morning as a human? So we shouldn't be surprised by this. And we shouldn't feel sad about it for others. We should say, please, journey on peacefully. It's much better than a stressful situation that we call life, that very often people suffer from, or physical difficulties, and so on. And so, I give heat means I give life. And light is there in the form of consciousness, intelligence, this luminosity of the mind, as it has been described on Saturday, for example, by Swami Purnananda, giving 7 kinds of attributes. One of them, luminosity, another, beauty. See? So life, all of these things are there. So I give heat, that is, I give light, I give radiance, I make the sun shine, and all things that are shining is because I stand behind that, beaming, lending my light and life and love also beyond the borders. Then not only I give heat, but aham varsham, rain. I give rain. I send forth rain and I withhold rain also. I go forth and I retreat. Like the oceans, the tide comes in, the tide goes out. We can spend hours listening to the rhythms of waves, coming and going. You can say this whole universe is something like a divine entity creatively breathing, exhaling, inhaling, over eons of time. What a wonderful concept. So I control the seasons. In the ancient days, when the Vedic sacrifices were there, these ancient rishis were concerned about the social impact of not having a rain. Social impact meaning if you don't have food. If you don't have rainfall, you don't have food. And rainfall comes in seasonally. And you must have some dedicated people who are dedicated to yajna, that is, praying, if you will. That means mobilizing thought with a positive intention. Indra, give us rainfall. As a social service, if I want society to thrive, then they must have food. To get food, they must have rainfall. To get rainfall, we have to have a positive attitude toward it. Some intentional insert must be there, not for my benefit, but idam mama, for all, for everybody. I am immortality and death, both. When we evaluate what is moral, what is immoral, what is plus, what is minus, there's the one system that doesn't require a separate evil agent. If you have a creator, then theologically the awkward question comes, so what about the problem of evil? Is there not evil in this world? But what is evil? A human evaluation which categorizes things into good, bad, virtue, vice. What you should do, what you shouldn't do. The human evaluation, a crocodile doesn't have it. Crocodile doesn't have any morality, it'll bite your leg. You can't say the crocodile is immoral. No sense of morality, immorality in a crocodile. Its nature is to bite. And if you're sensible, you won't put your leg in his mouth. You'll avoid it. You'll avoid the tiger, but God is in the tiger. But don't be foolish enough to stick your head in its mouth. It will have an inclination to close its mouth. And with that, your head is likely to be severed. Even if it's hanging on by a thread and you're cursing the tiger or the lion, this is pointless. The lion's nature is bite. But there's a duality in it. Poison in a snake is there. And it's to our detriment. But to the snake, it's an advantage. It itself doesn't get poisoned by it. So these alternate things, good and bad, are necessary. Light and shade are necessary. Positives and negatives are necessary. Everything comes in opposite pairs. Male, female, plus, minus, electron, positron, matter, antimatter. All of this has to be there. The impulse of the universe to move outward, electrical energy, and the impulse of gravity to pull things inward, making a balance. Both these forces are necessary. And so a separate Satan is not necessary to account for evil. You have a God who is all good. Then how is it that there is evil in the world? We have to make a separate agent. How do we interpret this agency? There's no need for a separate thing. That same entity manifests in all different ways to create a balance. What is, Vivekananda says, if I were to look for a Satan, I would look for him in the ego as egoism. This is your enemy. Don't think that there's a separate entity on your shoulder and you are entitled to project, oh don't, I never did it. Satan made me do it. Some invisible entity. See, there's a kind of cartoon image that is there in popular imagery of, a conscience. So one angel of good, one angel of darkness, and one whispers in the ear, do this. No, don't do that. Why don't you do this? And so on. Nothing like that. You have the capacity to tune in to the glory of the divine. And wrong tuning will make howling noises. You don't need a separate entity for it. Wrong tuning will do it. Tune all your attention to the glory of the divine. And then when wrong tuning comes, tune it back. When howling comes, when it goes off the station, tune back again. Like a transistor tuning into the electromagnetic wave systems where broadcasts take place. You want to tune into the BBC, you don't have to go to London for it. You can tune it in here or anywhere. Make sure that you tune correctly. Don't go for wrong tuning. So I am immortality and death. Death is the opposite of immortality. It's mortality. And it's described in that way. Mrityuha, mortality, death. How can you be opposite like this? Oh, I am immortality on the one hand, in my transcendent aspect. I was never born, I never die. But in my manifested aspect, when you add space and time, I am also death. I am both. No contradiction. And I am being, that is Sat existence, as well as Asat, non-being. How can I be being and non-being? I am beyond description. And Sat and Asat are also interpreted as a causal law. One thing causes I am in the causal realm and the acausal realm. That is, if you look at it from the relative point of view, you find a causal relationship with everything, and that makes it seem to be existent. But actually, from a real point of view, evaluating permanence and impermanence, it's unreal. I know it goes against your gut, but this is an imaginary world, and we require our imagination as its antidote, as its counterpoint. How do we deal with it? As you see, last week or the week before, I told you about the mongoose in the rail carriage. I'll just remind you of the story. I suppose if I say story, we have to say once upon a time. Anyhow, never mind. A man traveling in a railway carriage, two men actually, and naturally as the train goes on, they strike up conversation. The one man has a box with holes in, and the other man inquires, "What's in your box?" He says, "It's a mongoose." "Why do you keep a mongoose?" And the man points all over the place. He says, "To catch these snakes." The man puts his feet up. "The snakes? Where? Are there snakes in the carriage?" "No, don't worry. These are imaginary snakes." "This is imaginary snakes? You have a mongoose to catch imaginary?" No, don't worry. He lifts the box. The box lid comes off, and it's all empty inside. He says, "It's an imaginary mongoose. To catch the imaginary snakes, I require an imaginary mongoose. If I want to take a thorn out of my foot," says Ramakrishna, "I take another thorn and remove it." We were at some meeting with some devotees in Kilkenny once, and a question arose, or a statement arose, "Oh, we have to get rid of Maya." Another way of saying, we have to get rid of our imaginary mongoose, or we have to get rid of our thorn to take the other thorn out. We have to take away the sattvic, the revealing component of Maya. No, the revealing component of Maya is there. And once we use the revealing component, the revealing and the revealed are separate. Then automatically the revealed transcends all the other aspects of what we call Maya. That is to do with a revealing aspect, a hiding aspect, a projecting aspect. All these three are there. So I am being as well as my non-being, beyond description. Even this world, can we say it is being or non-being? It is both being and non-being. It is beyond description. It is inscrutable. Same thing with its source. So what is the way then of those who do not see this, those people who don't register everything to its proper account? The way of the enjoyment seekers goes like this. Traividya mam samabha buddha papa yajñe ishtva sragatim pratayanti te punyam ashadya surendra lokam ashtanti divyam divi diva bhogam. What about the knowers of scripture? In this case, when this was written or spoken about, only 3 Vedas were referred to. The 4th Veda is later. Atharva Veda is later. The principal Upanishads are there. The Rig Veda is there. And all the other Vedas, all the other Vedas are variations of that for different purposes. So, the Yajur Veda, Samaveda and so on, is there for singing purposes and sacrificial purposes, but the central thing is the Rig Veda. And there you'll find, you see, the knowers of all these 3 Vedas, that is the whole corpus of knowledge in the ancient days. The drinkers of the soma used in sacrifices, that is to do with worship and ritual. Purified from any blemish because their intention is pure. Worshipping me by sacrifices, by following certain ritualistic standards and norms. Pray for the way to me, no, to heaven. It was understood that it would be good if we look after this life, but also in view of the fact that we die, would there be a heaven? Is it not a great prize? Should we not make this our goal? That means they miss the mark. Now in most religions, many religions, not most, many religions, you ask somebody, what is your goal? They say heaven. But then you see, what is heaven? Is it not a glorified this earth? What is Muslim heaven, for example? What is seen to be the ideal in a desert? You have an oasis where the beautiful perfumes are available and abundant food and drink are available, and you have cooling water. So heaven is painted in this way. A great paradise is created. And then here's an encouragement for you to do something good. You get a reward. The alternative is not pleasant. The alternative is, of course, you'll find some kind of area where there is an eternal barbecue, but unfortunately, you're the subject of it. And then a wonderful heaven where the mortal nectar is enjoyed, but still physical. This understanding was noticed by these ancient people. And they realized, even if you're reborn and drink the fruit or enjoy the fruit of all your merits in a paradise that fulfills all your desires, unfortunately, your holiday money will run out. And you have to come back and be reborn. They realized, is it not better, rather than purchasing a return ticket, to purchase a one-way ticket? You see what we do? Spend the whole year saving up to go on what we might call a complexion-changing experience called a holiday in Spain. You enjoy the sun rays that we mentioned previously, and then come back, and the Irish expression is, oh, you have such a good color. It means you burnt your skin radiant red, and it's very tender. You saved the whole money up to do this, but then you had to come back and save up again for the next one. So it goes on. What a funny journey. So what is heaven? Or a variety of heavens, if you will. fulfillment of your desire to acquire some fruit, some merit for your meritorious actions. But you'll have to come back, and even if you're reborn as a deva, as a god, it was soon realized, or an angel, you have to come back here. So this is your heaven. Why not create your heaven here? Why do you have to wait for a post-mortem condition? This was the understanding. Your goal is not the holiday camp that we call heaven. You'll spend your holiday money and you'll have to come back here. That's the idea. So this was soon realized. All the ancient ritual was oriented around this life and getting the merits of your good deeds in the afterlife. So the commentary goes like this: as the immanent reality, the working of Ishvara, the Lord of the universe, and through the cosmos has its glory. As the sun, the Lord gives heat, and so on, is the commentary from previously. And then finally, what is mentioned is that the foremost among the heavenly enjoyments to which the three Vedas, Rik, Saman and Yajus, show the path, we find this can end up as a governing entity called Deva, which is unfortunately translated as God of gods. Devas, gods, no, illuminating factors. So illuminating factors, and traditionally Indra is the king of that. Of course, Indra is also the king of all the senses, Indriyas. This status comes to the one who successfully performs 100 fruit-motivated yajnas. That means it's not pure because you're doing this action to get something. That means an assumption, I haven't got it. There's an absence in me. What is desire? And what is this life driven by? And any post-mortem life driven by is driven by desires. Desires means I have a feeling that there's a hollow and empty space in me that has to be fulfilled from outside. Let me go and get it. And as soon as I got it, do I feel full? Do I feel fulfilled? No. I find there's another gap in me. What is my whole life endeavor? Identifying the gaps in me and trying to fulfill them from outside, never occurring to me that I'm already full and free and perfect. What is it like? It's like the Irish weather. You may come to a conclusion, there is no sun. And then you apply to Spain and say, we wish that our sun was the same as your sun. But it's the same sun. It's only that there are clouds here and no clouds there. It's the clouds that stand in the way. We have to move the ignorance on, represented in the analogy by clouds. Oh, I cannot see my attractive face today. You look in the mirror, oh, here's a cloth, take some soap, some water, and clean the mirror. Oh, I see. How beautiful or otherwise, of course, how beautiful I look. My reflection is looking so nice. Yes, it was always like that, but only you had to remove the dirt from the mirror. You have to blow away the smoke to reveal the fire. And you have to move the clouds on to see the sun. The sun is already there beaming. What's the evidence? You go above the clouds, take an airplane journey above the clouds, where no weather exists. It only exists below the clouds. The sun is already there, beaming, shining. No need to import a sun from Spain. It's already there, full and free. Just move it on. That's the point. So as long as you feel you have a desire, as long as you have a want, either physically or psychologically or emotionally or any of these things, an assumed gap or hollow in me that has to be fulfilled, how? From outside. Anything like that goes along with it a negative connotation. I don't have. I want, I don't have. As soon as you say I want, there's a bracketed version, I don't have. I want to be a good person, bracketed, I'm not a good person. I want material wealth, I don't have it. Now, thought being a wish-fulfilling tree, every thought will be fulfilled. Every intention will carry through. I want +1. I haven't got -1. Nothing happens. plus 1, minus 1, all cancelled out. Finished. Sooner or later, a person like this will have to understand and realize, everything is full and free within me. The kingdom of heaven, I don't have to look for a heaven outside me or in a post-mortem environment. The kingdom of heaven is within me. It's already there, already fulfilled, already perfect. No need to attain anything, acquire anything by doing meritorious deeds or ceremonies or yajnas or mantras or any of these things. So it goes on, see, Titam bhukta svalokam visharam kshina punye murtya lokam vishanti evam trayi dharmam anuprapana gata gatam kama kama labanti. Having enjoyed the vast world of heaven, because heavenly years might be eons, of course, infinite compared to this, they return to the world of mortals on the exhaustion of their merits. In other words, once they spent their holiday money. Thus abiding by the injunction of the three Vedas, desiring objects of desires, they go and come, and we may say, coming and going, this is an eternal samsara cycle, never getting out of it. If that is your mindset, that you get the merits of good deeds. So, Patanjali Yoga Sutras puts it a different way. There's a passage there, good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformation. We come back to evolution. Transformations into different species is not because of your good or bad deeds. It's nothing to do with the merits and fruits of that. It's to do with removing obstacles. Just as clouds have to be moved on to witness the sun, just as dirt has to be removed from a mirror to reveal what is there, just as smoke has to be blown on to reveal the fire behind it. In this same way, this evolution, as it were, seeming evolution takes place compared to flow. So we were discussing at the lunchtime something like a flow evolutionary theory. My words, no doubt. But this is the ancient yogic idea, which we find in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. There are obstacles in the way compared to getting a water from a reservoir into a farmer's fields. You have a series of channels with gates. And each gate, when you remove a gate, you don't have to take a teaspoon of water to the other side or a bucket to the other side. The water simply flows by itself. There's a flow. And the characteristic of water says, I want to take the shortest direction. This is my nature. I want ultimately to get to the lowest point, maybe the ocean, where the ocean we can compare to the deep ocean of my own nature, this perfection, this kingdom of heaven within. And so how will I do that? I'll allow the flow to happen by removing obstacles. So Vivekananda puts it this way, when the mammal gate or obstacles was removed, man came out. In that same way, when the obstacle called man gets removed, God comes out, your divinity comes out. In that same way it's been flowing. From the amoeba, from the bacteria onwards, finding an easy route and sometimes collecting in a pool somewhere, but always trying to find a way around the obstacle and break through it, creating a variation, such a variation of species, but always with a purpose and a flow and a destiny, always a movement onwards. Epigenetics uses that term, so there's a term for it, which means that it's like things going downhill in a certain channel and finding its normal gravitational resting point at the bottom. In other words, it's destiny. So that there's a pulling and a pushing to it. We are pulled toward the divine and pushed toward it from within. This truly is evolution. So man gets what he seeks, and we'll continue next week. with the subject of, to those people who worship, who do not worship for any result, but who worship the goal and the source, what will their destiny be and what will they gain? That would be stanza 22 in this Srimad Bhagavad Gita of the chapter Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace unto all.